The definitions of patriot and traitor have been completely reversed in today's world. Modern so-called flag-waving, quote-unquote, patriots who uphold the belief in government are actually traitors to humanity, whether they know it or not, because they advocate the very belief system that leads to the destruction of human freedom. And that's what a traitor does. The flag-waving patriots, so-called patriots, are traitors because what they back is the government. And they're confusing the government with the people. And those things should never be confused. True dissidents are the real patriots because they love their country enough to stand against the tyranny at work within it. Do not make the mistake of confusing country, meaning the land and its people who live upon it, with the particular government that happens to be in control of the country. I love my country. Don't think that means I'm an advocate of politics and government. My country are the people and the land. I love my country. I serve my country in addition to serving truth. I serve truth above all else, and I'll serve my country, which means the people and the land, and I will help advocate for their freedom and teach them the principles of freedom. But that doesn't mean I love government. I hate all forms of government because all forms of government are slavery. This is what a true patriot is. And I consider it a high honor that when I receive a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Tesla Science Foundation, bestowed on me by the president of the foundation, Nick Launchar, for doing the work that I've done with the Tesla Science Foundation. He gave me that award, and when he gave it to me at the New Yorker Hotel, the place where Nikola Tesla died, he said, I want to introduce Mark Passio, who I consider a true American patriot, and I almost broke down in tears. Yeah, that was a high honor to me from that man because he used the term in the true sense of what it really means. So that's what a real patriot is versus a false patriot. Thomas Paine said the duty of a true patriot is to protect his country from its government. Very true words. Modern military are not to be confused with revolutionary patriots and the militia of the people. They are the modern-day equivalent of the king's henchmen. The supporters of the police and military are the modern-day equivalent of the Tories, those who backed and supported the Crown and the British troops during the American Revolutionary era period. The military are obviously not fighting for our freedom. They are fighting for the empire of their masters and their order givers. The military and police are not the protectors of a free society. They are the enforcers of enslavement by the ruling class. And they need to wake up. Some of them are just on the verge of beginning a slight low-level awakening process, but it has to be accelerated and advanced far beyond where the majority of them are. If they were really fighting for our freedom, this is what it would look like. Let's talk about a really dark topic, overt slavery in early America. Not covert slavery like we're in now, but overt slavery. Some of the most abhorrent practices ever conducted upon human beings. Many of the black slaves of early America and Civil War period America were dissidents because they opposed their condition of overt slavery. Slaves of the Civil War period lived under continuous duress. They were viewed as someone else's property, forced to work under the threat of violence or death, and deprived of the very fruits of their own labor. That's the very definition of slavery. Black slaves in early America were kidnapped from their native lands and brought to America by ships over the Atlantic Ocean in crowded and unsanitary conditions, totally inhumane, unsanitary conditions. Those that even survived the journey across the Atlantic were sold at slave auctions and then taken to forced labor camps called plantations to endure indentured servitude, working crop fields in torturous conditions for the duration of their lives. Many who offered resistance were whipped or beaten mercilessly, hung, burned, or even fed to dogs alive. Laws were passed which barred slaves from escaping a state where slavery was legal to one where it had been banned. Runaway slaves were often hunted and returned to bondage. There were bounty hunters all over the northern states looking for escaped slaves from the southern states. And let me tell you something, folks. This is how the police forces of America started. Yeah, that's not revisionist history, ladies and gentlemen. That's real history. The police were started from runaway slave patrols in the northern colonies. Okay, in the northern states. Yeah, learn some true history. Study about how that really happened, instead of some of the alternative so-called theories, conspiracy theories that are out there and wildly off from the truth. There's a true conspiracy. It's not no conspiracy. It's a historical fact. Laws were even passed to criminalize helping or harboring runaway slaves. You could be jailed or worse for even helping them escape. Some Civil War era slaves, such as Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman, acted as dissidents and offered resistance against the practice of slavery by escaping themselves and fleeing to states where slavery was not practiced, and then helping other slaves escape as well. While means such as these certainly showed disdain for their former masters and their abhorrent actions, many would argue that these means undoubtedly still constituted what could only be called passive resistance, since they did not directly take action against those who were conducting such hideous and immoral practices without any right to do so. Now, I'm not saying that they were wrong for doing this. They were tremendous for doing this, okay? But in my estimation, I'm just speaking for myself, it doesn't go far enough. It's still advocating simply for escape to another place where this isn't going to be done to you. How many people still think, well, where can we run to? I'm going to expatriate. I'm going to go down to, Uruguay, or Costa Rica. I'm not running anywhere. I'm staying right here and fighting this evil. Not going anywhere. That's a patriot and a being with courage to fight evil. And if I'm struck down dead, I'll be struck down dead fighting for freedom, true freedom. That being said, I commend their efforts to at least help, move slaves, former slaves, into a safe area when they had fled their oppression and enslavers, because so many laws and scenarios had been put in place to bring them back into indentured servitude. So they're to be commended at least for that. Who I commend much more and think of as true dissidents against this hideous practice, were the slaves who actually physically rebelled against their masters. And let me tell you something, the media was at work as ever, painting it as something that, this was a hideous, horrid massacre in Virginia. God forbid, beings that were being sold into indentured servitude and treated as other people's property were killing the people that did that thing, that horrible thing to them and put them in that condition. How dare they? How dare they kill their masters? Imagine this, the media doing their job. They're paid liars and paid deceivers. They were still at work then as they are today. Some slaves during this time period rebelled physically. There were many slave revolts, most of which were violently suppressed. Such revolts were subsequently downplayed or entirely covered up in modern historical accounts. Every slave ever held under these deplorable conditions and immoral conditions, possessed every right under natural law to rebel against, physically rebel against, fight against, and even kill their enslavers. Now, that being said, many of them died trying to kill them. See, once again, I'm never claiming or promising anybody that a physical fight against evil oppressors is going to end well, or possibly even end with the person who's in the right still being alive. I'm just trying to explain to you the right exists, and their behavior was morally right. Morally right. Get it burned into the brain. It was a morally correct and right behavior. They had every right to do this. Some of the more famous slave revolts were Gabriel Prosser's rebellion in Richmond, Virginia in the year 1800. I'm going to skip the Haitian Revolution for a moment and come back to it. The German Coast Uprising in Louisiana in 1811, Nat Turner's Rebellion in Southampton County, Virginia in 1831, and John Brown's raid on Harper's Ferry in Harper's Ferry, Virginia in 1859. The one that was not in the United States proper, but in the Caribbean on the island of Haiti, was called the Haitian Revolution, and it was the most brutal of any slave rebellion, and arguably the most successful of any slave rebellion. Because let me tell you something, folks, these guys and gals didn't play. They killed their masters often down to the last man, woman, and child with every right to do it. And then they were branded as somehow violent or barbarian, or, oh, they're so, violent, they're so, I don't know, a non-human or something. No, they were acting in the way that they have every human right to behave when they're enslaved and oppressed like that. Because no one was coming with reason to help them be liberated, and no one was listening to the reason that the practice of holding them in duress like that was immoral and done without right. So they took up arms and did what they had to do, and you know what? They are absolutely commended by me for doing it, because that's what protecting your freedom is when you don't have any other recourse. And we're going to come to a place like that, and it's going to make the Haitian Revolution look like a little boy and girl's tea party, because of what exists, the kind of technology that exists in America. And once again, I'm trying to avert that. But without more teachers stepping up and doing this work, we're going to go right down that path of bloodshed. I'm just trying to help you guys understand what is required. This should not be my voice. I should not be the one doing this, saying this. I should have 10 million choices to tag out to and have somebody else come in and pick up right where I leave off, if I so choose. Or if any of the other people so choose, there should be 10 million teachers worldwide of this information, of natural law. Minimum. I think we can get it done with 10 million, but probably no less than that. And I mean 10 million who know it as well as I know it, who know it as well as former mystery tradition initiates knew it, who knew it like someone like Richard Wetherill knows it, who knows it like someone like Larkin Rose knows it, etc. Like Lennon Honor, like all the other individuals who spoke here today. We need more teachers of true objective morality. I'm looking at you and I'm talking to you. We need to step up our efforts. People have to shed the fear of speaking out and start doing this in a way that you can reach as many minds as possible. I don't care what method you use to do it. You might not like my methodology, you might not like my tact or tone, and I couldn't give a shit. All I care about is that you put the information out that needs to be put out there. So we avert to scenarios like this, because they're coming. And it's no joke, and it's nothing to laugh about. And when people recognize what war is, if it comes to this land, I'm telling you, most people are not psychologically prepared, and far fewer are physically prepared. I'm prepared in both aspects, and I'll die today if required, because I've done what I came here to do. You know, I'm fine. I'm fine with, you know, this having been my life up to this point. How many people can say that? Not many. I'm not saying that to, you know, put myself up on any kind of a pedestal. I'm just saying when you've realized your purpose and you've done what you're here to do, there is no fear of death at all. I don't consider it for a moment. Modern day anarchists, those who are saying no to slavery. Anarchists in modern times are dissidents, true dissidents, because they fully reject the belief in authority, and they reject having a ruling class or a centralized power structure to rule over them. Anarchists understand the truth that no being can legitimately rule another. By direct contrast, as we talked about earlier, every non-anarchist or statist is a supporter of slavery. And that's all I'm really going to say about the modern anarchist movement. That's what true anarchy is. You know, there's a lot of fake anarchists out there. I might do a presentation called Fake-Ass Anarchists. You know, all the hyphenized anarchists in the so-called anarchist movement, pranksters. Pranksters, if you know what that means in street lingo, okay? They're a joke who have no idea what real anarchy is at all, because they don't understand natural law principles and objective morality, nor do they understand that those come from the laws of creation, regardless of what you want to refer to that force as. They think we bestow rights on ourselves or on others. No, that's not how it works in nature. Rights are inherent to creation. And people have to understand that. As long as they don't understand that, they will never come to a correct understanding of natural law, and they will never understand how we are bound invariably according to universal moral law. Our behaviors are bound whether we like it or not, and we will receive the consequences of our behavior. There is no escape from that. And that is a universal, present condition that exists in nature. It does not come from man. So true anarchy is about understanding this is about no masters, no slaves, but it does not mean no rules. There will always be rules under natural law. It means no rulers. Those dissidents are my family, okay? And that's what we need a lot more of. The last section in the presentation today, deadly force. Very controversial territory. That which I haven't spoken on a great deal. Perhaps hinted at it, but not directly taken on this topic. We now arrive at a very controversial and disconcerting topic. When does one have the right to kill? To end by deadly force the life of another, should that other refuse to stop initiating violence against their person or their rights? When does one possess the right to kill those who are holding them in a state of duress? To understand this, or even consider the question, we have to understand the natural law distinction between force and violence. They are nothing alike. They are diametrically opposed opposites. Force is, in nature, the capacity to do work or cause physical change. Every single thing that you act upon to create any kind of change within your rights, you are conducting force. You are employing force. Force is synonymous scientifically with energy, strength, or active power being actively applied to something. And when it is within our natural rights, it is force. It is not coercion or violence. Force is action which exists in harmony with morality and natural law because the employment of it does not violate the rights of others. It is action which one always possesses the right to take, including defensive force employed against active violence being conducted upon yourself or your property or your rights. And that also includes the right to take defensive action against being held in a state of duress. It includes duress, meaning the threat of violence when you're not in compliance with another's coercive demands. You have the right to physically defend yourself in that instance. Violence, on the other hand, is the immoral use of physical power to coerce, compel, or restrain without right. There's no natural right to do this behavior. So violence, no one ever has the right to conduct. Violence is the initiation of coercive action which is in opposition to morality and natural law for the very reason that it violates the rights of others. That's where the word violence comes from. It comes from the root violation or violate. That's why it's called violence. Violence is action which one never possesses the right to take. It is always a wrongdoing to conduct violence upon another. That's the difference between force, especially defensive force, and violence. And people have to make that distinction philosophically. They have to understand it and be able to explain it. There is no such thing as the right to murder. Notice the word that I am using. There is no such thing as the right to murder. As a prescription against unjust killing, the fifth commandment of the Ten Commandments in the Old Testament scripture does not actually translate as, quote, do not kill, or thou shalt not kill. That is not what the fifth commandment of the Torah, the Old Testament, says. Although that's the way it's popularly translated in almost every biblical translation. The fifth commandment in Hebrew is transliterated into English. There's the Hebrew characters, but in English it would be transliterated as lo tirzak. And lo tirzak means do not murder. Thou shalt not commit murder, not thou shalt not kill. There is a crucial difference between the two translations. To murder is to act outside of one's natural law rights with violence against the life of another, without right. When someone transgresses against our natural law rights through violence, we always possess the right to defend ourselves with whatever amount of force is required to stop the aggression, up to and including deadly force. The Bible and the Ten Commandments, in historical, traditional, religious context, never says there is no time when you should not kill if you are doing it in a justified, true, right way, when your rights and life and property are being violated by those who will not listen to reason and stop performing those behaviors. It says do not murder, which means you shouldn't conduct violence against another person's life by initiating coercive action and possibly deadly force action when you have no such right to do that. Clear and critical, important distinction between those two modalities of behavior. And too few people understand them or are even comfortable with discussing the difference between killing and murder. If it's truly immoral to ever kill, well, did the revolutionaries have the right to kill the British soldiers who were oppressing them? Did the Haitian slaves have a right to kill their slave owners? Of course they had the right. 100% had the natural right to perform those behaviors. The people who were conducting murder upon these people, if they didn't obey their decrees and commands, had no such right. That's when it was immoral. To explore the original question further, let's consider the example of a kidnapping, which is a person being coercively taken against their will for nefarious reasons. When does the individual being kidnapped have the right to use defensive physical force, including deadly force, against the kidnappers? There is a correct answer to that question. And the correct answer, they have the right to use deadly force as soon as the act of duress begins. As soon as their free will has been usurped and they are being coerced and restrained from exercising their freedom and their free will. The answer is immediately upon being put under the condition of duress, they have the right to employ deadly force. Once again, that doesn't mean that they would be necessarily successful, and they may die in the attempt to repel the violence being conducted upon them. But in nature, they possess the right to kill the individual or group, putting them in that condition of duress. I'm making no promise about their safety. I'm trying to explain that the right exists. The psychological fear of self-defense and rebellion comes from a deeply seated fear of true freedom in this population. Absolutely. True freedom is uncharted territory for human beings, because we've never truly been free. Even if you want to argue shortly after the colonists performed the rebellion, which is the first true, real act of rebellion against tyrants in large numbers, we might have enjoyed a little bit of physical freedom for a very short period of time. And I mean, it numbers in the years or less. Freedom is unexplored country. Hence, it is frightening to most people because most people fear the unknown. Moreover, people fear true freedom because true freedom implies and carries with it total personal responsibility, which most human beings do not want and which most human beings will attempt to avoid at all costs. Most people are also very fearful of the types of sacrifice that may be necessary to gain real freedom. And I go back to the American revolutionaries. You want to talk about sacrifice. Walking through ice at Valley Forge with no boots or shoes, tying ripped pieces of their uniforms like rags around their feet, blood trailing them as they walked to go fight. That's the conditions they started the battle in. Imagine how they finished them. Less than 2,500 people left in the Revolutionary Army in freezing ice conditions in southern Pennsylvania and western New Jersey. And until they, you want to talk about having to really, really suck it up to get a job done. On Christmas Day, crossing the Delaware to go and attack the British, which was an unheard of tactic. The pre-dawn attack in blizzard-like conditions so that they had cover and weren't seen coming. They fought 5 times their numbers and it at least inflicted enough damage that they morally inspire other people to come and join the cause, and other militias came and joined their cause. You want to talk about sacrifice? We have no idea. None of us. I've talked on my podcast before of being at Valley Forge and feeling an energy literally like a boulder on my chest, because I know that I was there. I don't know how I know it, but I know it balls to bones that I was there. Okay? Because I feel the energy in that place. I don't even ever want to go back there ever again, and I only live a few miles from it. Because of the energetic vibration that I felt being present there almost made me physically ill. Almost every time I've been there, I felt it. If people won't fight for freedom, please do not tell me that you love yourself or anyone else. See, because that's real love. People will say, oh, you got to come more from the heart energy. You got to come more from a place of compassion. This is real love. Real love is telling people the harsh shit that no one else wants to tell them because you really love them at a soul level and they need to understand it.